Hello, everyone. Welcome. Here, look, I'm going to switch the camera around for us so you see where we are. There's so much, I see so much more ocean than that's on the camera. Anyway, that's the ocean, and we're on this trail. I'm going to turn the camera back to me. Today, we're starting a new book. I had to do it this way because I looked everywhere, and I set the book aside for us a while back. And I couldn't find it this morning. I had to go, so because I set aside an hour for us. But right now I'm going to walk a little because I want to get us to the top. But I need to introduce the book anyway, so 1 second. Morning.
Hello. Hi.
Oh gosh.
Super friendly.
No, it's okay, Leia. It's okay.
Okay.
It's okay.
Come on, Baba.
Have a good one. It's a big dog of mine. That big dog was scared of my little dog. See, here's my little dog. Okay, so welcome. My name's Dr. Cheryl Meyer. Just Cheryl for this, probably. Look, the ocean more you can see. I'm in Southern California, and morning. And so I've been reading a lot of George MacDonald books. I took a class on C.S. Lewis 5 times when I was in college and graduate school. And they said he said his spiritual mentor was George MacDonald. And so C.S. Lewis is such a profound man and wrote so well. He had a photographic memory, so he wrote so well on, in our class, there was the romantic approach to theology and the rational approach to theology. This is the way a man, Dr. Jerry Root, taught us. He compiled a book called The Quotable Lewis, which is a bunch of C.S. Lewis quotes. So anyway, I went to college when I was 17, so that was a while ago. And Jerry Root, our professor, had just said, pick an author. It doesn't have to be C.S. Lewis, but just one, so you can go really deep. And I just knew that C.S. Lewis was so well read that I picked him, and then through him came George MacDonald, who was his mentor. And also I got a list one time. If you look on my YouTube channel, it's on my voice stream reader, my video I did so many years ago. Anyway, C.S. Lewis had a list of the 10 most important books that influenced his life. Of course, besides all of George MacDonald's. But anyway, let's get the sun. So you can look at that list if you want. And I read a lot of those. I think I have all of them. One of them is Boethius' Consolation of Philosophy, written in about 480 or 470 AD by Boethius. But what I found with George MacDonald, so I'm a psychologist in my day job, and I'm only just saying that because I always I took Greek for 2 years, but ology is like the study of or the science of, and the word psyche is your soul. So I always looked at it as like, I want to understand the soul, and I want to teach people about knowing your soul. And Genesis 1, I think it's Genesis 1, says God breathed a soul into Adam, and Adam in Hebrew just means man, or ruddy earth, or red. I have red on. But anyway, hold on, this is a hill. It's so pretty though, right? There's people coming, so I'll pause. Hi, all.
Hi, he was renting that in office for 3 years.
I have an accent. All right. So you want more of an introduction. George MacDonald was an 1800s Scottish writer. He was friends with Lewis Carroll, the writer of, it keeps moving because she's pulling on the leash, of Alice in Wonderland. I think they said George MacDonald was the one that encouraged him to publish that. Excuse me. So I needed to get started because I spent like 10 minutes looking for our book. So I had to start, but I remembered we could do the intro while we're going up this last hill. But let's see, I want to turn this around so you see the beautiful view as it comes up. But all right, so George MacDonald. I forgot I can push pause on these, but I want to mess with all of it right now. I usually don't record this way. Anyway, so C.S. Lewis said of George MacDonald, "Never have I met another man closer to the Spirit of Christ." You know, he had the Holy Spirit so well in him, and he had some people say, like, you don't get part of the Holy Spirit when you, and we'll turn this back. Now, I always invite all people. All people are welcome. So, but what I was going to say is, like, there's no but. It's just what I was going to say is when you invite the Holy Spirit in the ocean, then it says, don't you know you are a living temple of God? The Holy Spirit indwells in you. And so I invite that for everyone, but I was just reflecting on the way up here. I was meditating on my way up here. This is a long ways. I was listening to this Derek Prince video last night, and he was saying that God never dominates us. He doesn't try to dominate us. He calls us and invites us and gives us, you know, the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He gives us all the means. You know, Jesus said, I came to heal the brokenhearted. Well, it's like, enter into the story that George MacDonald wrote for us, and you'll see Jesus through George MacDonald's writing, through me coming out in nature and deciding to give this hour away. And I'm still not getting paid at all, so I can read this book from where I'm going to get it today online, because they said as long as you're not doing it, I think it's for money, and it's great because I haven't been paid yet. So for 5 years, I've been doing this. I laugh because it's just like, you know, I think it's a model too of just keep planting the seeds where God tells you to plant them. And He is our source. Everything else is a resource. So you're never dependent on any of these things. But that's side lessons. I'm not trying to do this to teach us stuff, you know, like my teaching videos, but understand that George MacDonald, he had a really good father. All right, so some of us have had father issues or mother issues. Psalm 27:10 is fine. It says, when my mother and father forsake me, the Lord, the I am that I am, picks me up. All right, and so God picks us up, and He can pick us up through stories. Why do you think Jesus so often told what He was teaching through stories? You know, He sometimes when someone's just talking at us, we don't get it. It just goes in one ear and out another. Wow. And so sometimes stories, they just heal us another way. And we're not coming at them like, hey, the you story, you have to heal me. Yeah, that's transaction. We're just coming to enter in and see what God spoke creatively through George MacDonald. Hold on, there's people coming. And the views. Oh, here comes the ranger. I'll show the truck. Oh, I forgot. It's pointing at me. So anyway. Morning. It's not the ranger, it's the water people. I hope they're gonna go check that our water's here. The water people. She had a beautiful perfume. Wow. Okay. We're coming to the fancy area because I always say, like, I can't anyway, I won't say. I'm stopped sometimes from anyway, I don't want to just ramble. Let's appreciate George MacDonald. Now I'll tell you as we're coming up to the view. The grand view is I was like, well, why aren't you seeing what my eyes are seeing? I forgot to flip the camera. Is on my YouTube channel, which is just my name, Dr. Cheryl Meyer, wherever you're hearing this or seeing this, is a whole playlist, lots of them, of the princess and the goblin, the princess and the cardi, the wise woman, and At the Back of the North Wind, I think, and one unspoken sermon called The White Stone. I think those are all the George MacDonald books I've read so far. And in The Princess and the Goblin, I think, yeah, that's the first one of those stories. George MacDonald says, you know, it's like the princess, the girl, this not the she's a princess in the story, interrupts George MacDonald, the writer, and says, excuse me, Mr. Editor, Mr. Writer, why do you start the story with a princess? Once upon a time. And he's like, because all little boys and girls are princesses and princes, but most have forgotten, or what, I don't know if he says most, but, and so here comes the view. He starts with that premise. And so you see it. C.S. Lewis says every one of his books quoted George MacDonald directly or indirectly. So here's the view. So, of course, George MacDonald says, C.S. Lewis says in the Narnia books, you know, once a king or queen of Narnia, always a king or queen of Narnia. When the four Pevensey kids become two kings and queens of Narnia, just showing you that, excuse me, any regular schoolboy or girl can become what God always meant us to become. You know, read Psalm 23, it says, the Lord is my shepherd, therefore I lack nothing. And one of the verses in it that King David wrote, you know, but he was a shepherd before that, he was appointed king and anointed, is you lead me on paths of righteousness for your name's sake. God puts his name in us. Well, I'm going to pick up Leah. And so in 2 Peter, I think it is, in Revelation, it says we're called to be kings and priests. So there's lots to it. I have a whole series on kings and priests, and some of them are indirect. We'll just sit here. All right. So let me start the book for us. Maybe I'll get my stand out. Maybe I'll get water for Leah. All right. Let me see how this, it turned sideways. Hold on, I don't know what you're seeing, if you're seeing it. All right, we might have to do this, let's see. I think I can turn this sideways. Yeah, all right, I got the book sideways and this sideways. All right. So, excuse me. MacDonald wrote this in the 1800s, so it's free copyright, free domain. And there might be this one part, sometimes because of how they flag you on this channel. He wrote back in the day, there's nothing bad or at all in this, but there's what I don't want to call it. Just the way he wrote was very, I don't know. I might just leave out one page, but if I do, I'll let you know. Wait, I don't want okay, hold on, the view. But it won't come soon. Oops. One second. Let's see. See how I had it. All right. Oh, I forgot. I'm gonna flip it around. Okay. Sir Gibbie by George MacDonald. And I forgot. He has a lot of this Scottish, like, I can't, like, some of the words I just can't even say. So I'm gonna leave you a link so you can read along if you want, but I'm gonna just do my best. And, you know, we do our best and leave the rest. Let me just say it like that, you know. What do we get? We get what we get. We don't throw a fit. Okay, this chapter 1, is called The Earring. Come out of the gutter, ye nickum, cried an harsh, half-masculine voice, a woman standing on the curbstone of a short, narrow, dirty lane at right angles to an important thoroughfare. Itself, none of the wildest or cleanest. She was dressed in dark petticoat and print wrapper. One of her shoes was down at the heel and discovered a great hole in her stocking. Had her black hair been brushed and displayed, it would have revealed a thready glitter of gray. But all that was now visible of it was only 2 or 3 untidy tresses that dropped from under a cap of black net and green ribbons, which looked as if she had slept in it. Her face must have been handsome when it was young and fresh, but was now beginning to look tattooed, though whether the color was from without or from within, it would have been hard to determine. Excuse me. Her black eyes looked resolute, almost fierce, above her straight, well-formed nose, yet evidently circumstance clave fast to her. She had never risen above it, and was now plainly subjected to it. About 30 yards from her, on the farther side of the main street and just opposite of the mouth of the lane, a child apparently about 6, but in reality about 8, was down on his knees, raking with both hands in the gray dirt of the kennel. At the woman's cry, he lifted his head, ceased his search, raised himself, but without getting up, and looked at her. They were notable eyes out of which he looked. Of such a deep blue were they, and having such long lashes. Excuse me, but more notable, far from their expression, the nature of which, although a certain witchery of confidence was at once discoverable, was not to be determined without the help of the whole face, whose diffused meaning seemed in them to deepen almost to speech. Whatever was at the heart of that expression, it was something that enticed question and might want investigation. The face as well as the eyes was lovely, not very clean, and not too regular for hope of a fine development, but chiefly remarkable from a general effect of something I can call luminosity. Wow. So yeah, I said this book is called Sir Gibbie, and it's just one of my very favorites. This woman, Madeline Ellingle, I got to meet her. She wrote A Wrinkle in Time. She said the best thing about C.S. Lewis was that he introduced her to George MacDonald. Like, that's how much she loved George MacDonald. He's just, anyway. Okay, so something I can only call luminosity. The hair which stuck out from his head in every direction, like a round fur cap, would have been of the red gold kind had it not been sunburned into a sort of human hay. An odd creature altogether the child appeared, as shaking the gutter drops from his little dirty hands. He gazed from his bare knees on the curbstone at the woman of rebuke. It was but for a moment. The next, he was down, raking in the gutter again. The woman looked angry and took a step forward, but the sound of a sharp, imperative little bell behind her made her turn at once and re-enter the shop from which she had just issued, following a man whose pushing the door wider had set the bell ringing. Above the door was a small board, nearly square, upon which was painted in lead colored on a black ground the words, "Licensed to sell beer, spirits, and tobacco, to be drunk on the premises." There was no other sign. "Them likes my whiskey, 'll know I be spearing my name," said Mistress Kroll. That's this woman, right? As the day went on, she would have more and more customers, and in the evening, on to midnight, her parlor would be well filled. Then she would be always at hand, and the spring of the bell would be turned aside from the impact of the opening door. Now the bell was needful to recall her from house affairs. I don't know what age I would suggest this. Like, if a parent's going to talk to their child through all of this, then, but maybe above 10. It just depends on the child, just if you're asking. But really, like, this is for all of us. Jesus says, in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, you must be like a child. And so anyway, I'll do my best. I don't feel like commenting a lot on this book. Just want to read it for us. Okay, so she goes back to her. The liking at creatures his for clean dirt. He's been at it this whole half hour, she murmured to herself as she poured from a black bottle into a pewter measure a gill of whiskey for the pale-faced topper who stood on the other side of the counter, far gone in consumption. He could not get through the forenoon without his morning. "I would like," she went on, as she replaced the bottle without having spoken a word to her customer, whose departure was now announced with the same boisterous alacrity as his arrival by the shrill-toned bell, "I would like, for father's sake, honest man, to throw Gibbie a lug. That liking for dirt I cannot fathom nor bide." Wow. So this is Gibbie. You're being introduced to Gibbie, but anyway, you'll see. Meantime, the boy's attention seemed entirely absorbed in the gutter. Whatever vehicle passed before him, whatever footsteps behind, he never lifted his head, but went, creeping slowly on his knees along the curb, still searching down the flow of the sluggish, nearly motionless current. It was a gray morning towards the close of autumn. The days began and ended with a fog, but often between, as golden as sunshine. Wow, it's like so not showing up in this camera. It's so beautiful. Maybe if we the sun. Anyway, as golden as sunshine glorified the streets of the gray city as any that ripened purple grapes. Today the mist had lasted longer than usual, had risen instead of dispersing, but now it was thinning, and at length, like a slow blossoming of sky-flower, the sun came melting through the cloud. Between the gables of two houses, a ray fell upon the pavement and the gutter. It lay there, a very type of purity, so pure that, rest where it might, it destroyed every shadow of defilement that sought to mingle with it. Suddenly, the boy made a dart upon all fours and pounced like a creature of prey upon something in the kennel. He had found what he had been looking for so long. He sprang to his feet and bounded with it into the sun, rubbing it as he ran upon what he had for trousers, of which there was nothing below the knees but a few streamers, and nothing above the knees but the body of the garment, which had been, I will not say made for, but last worn by a boy 3 times his size. His feet, of course, were bare, as well as his knees and legs. But though they were dirty, red, and rough, they were nicely shaped little legs, and the feet were dainty. The sunbeams he sought came down through the smoky air like a Jacob's ladder, and he stood at the foot of it like a little prodigal angel that wanted to go home again, but feared it was too much inclined for him to manage the ascent in the present condition of his wings. But all he did want was to see in the light of heaven what the gutter had yielded him. He held up his find in the radiance and regarded it admiringly. It was a little earring of amethyst-colored glass, and in the sun looked lovely. Let me see if oh, look, my ring turns green and purple and red sometimes. Hold on. You know how oh, it looks a little purple to me, but it looks almost brown in this. It's from Turkey, so it just changes colors. It's not a mood ring. Anyway, but it looks a little amethyst, this heart today. Anyway, it was a little earring of amethyst colored that's purple. This looks totally purple to me, but in the camera, it's just not looking purple. Oh well. I wonder if, anyway. And in the sun, it looked lovely. The boy was in ecstasy over it. He rubbed it, not for himself, you'll see. He rubbed it on his sleeve, sucked it to clear it from the last of the gutter, and held it up once more in the sun, where for a few blissful moments he contemplated it speechless. He then caused it to disappear somewhere about his garments, I will not venture to say in a pocket, and ran off, and his little bare feet sounding thud, thud, thud on the pavement, and the collar of his jacket sticking halfway up the back of his head, and threatening to rub it bare as he ran through street after street. He sped, all built of granite, all with flagged footways, and all paved with granite blocks, a hard, severe city, not beautiful or stately with its thick gray and sparkling walls, for the houses were not high, and the windows were small, yet in the better parts nevertheless handsome, as well as massive and strong. To the boy, the great city was but a house of many rooms, all for his use, his sport, his life. He did not know much of what lay within the houses, but that only added the joy of mystery to possession. They were jewel closets, treasure caves, indeed, with secret fountains of life, and every street was a channel into which they overflowed. You know, like a channel of an ocean or river. Excuse me. Let me get some water. It was in one of quite a third-rate sort of the urchin that length ceased his trot. Okay, it was one of quite a third-rate sort. Okay, so now we're in like a third-rate sort. I think it's London, I forget. But just a second there. I brought her water. A leftover bottle. 1 second, Liv. Hold on. There you go. Oh, she was thirsty. Oh, shoot. Somehow. Whoops. Unmuted, yes. Okay, good. The book dropped down. I'm having to read it like this because like I said, I couldn't find it. Oh, we'll get it. Okay, but it's back. All right. It was in one of quite a third-rate sort that the urchin at length ceased his trot and drew up at the door of a baker's shop, a divided door opening in the middle by a latch of bright brass. But the child did not lift the latch, only raised himself on tiptoe by the help of its handle to look through the upper half of the door, which was of glass, into the beautiful shop. All right, so let me grab my water. Urchin's not, I don't have to explain these things, but, because you can look up any word. It's not a bad word. He's just saying like, they would see them as street urchins or whatever, but you'll see the most glorious boy ever. I read it on my voice stream. I think it says, anyway. I'll just leave it like this. Okay. So to look through the upper half of the door, which was of glass, into the beautiful shop. The floor was of flags, fresh sanded. The counter was of deal. I don't know what deal is. This was written, in the 1800s, so I don't know what some of this is. Scrubbed as white almost as flour. On the shelves were heaped the loaves of the morning's baking, along with a large store of scones and rolls and baps. The best bread in the world, biscuits, hard and soft, and those brown discs of delicate, flaky pie crust known as buns. And the smell that came through the very glass, it seemed to the child, was as that of the tree of life in the paradise of which he had never heard. But most enticing of all to the eyes of the little wanderer of the street were the penny loaves, hot smoking from the oven, which fact is our first window into the ordered nature of the child. Excuse me. For the main point which made them more attractive than all the rest to him was that sometimes he did have a penny, and that a penny loaf was the largest thing that could be had for a penny in the shop, so that, lawless as he looked, the desires of the child were moderate, and his imagination wrought within the bounds of reason. But no one who has never been blessed with only a penny to spend and a mighty hunger behind it can understand the interest with which he stood there and through the glass watched the bread, having no penny and only the hunger. There was at least one powerful bond, though it may not always awake sympathy, between mudlark and monarch, that of hunger. No one has yet written the poetry of hunger, has built up in verse its stairs of grand ascent, from such hunger as Gibbie's, for a penny loaf up, no, not to an alderman's feast. That is the way down the moldy cellar stair, but up the white marble scale to the hunger after righteousness, whose very longings are bliss. That's the word I was saying. On the way here, I was studying that. You lead us on paths of righteousness for your name's sake. Hold on, Leia, come here. She's got burrs in her. Shoot, in her tail now. Come here, Leia. Please. Come on. Good girl. 1 second. I want to take care of this. Good girl, good girl. I picked her up on this one part so she wouldn't get these. Good girl, good girl. They're out. I want you to sit on this, honey. It's not. Okay. So that is the way down the moldy cellar stair, but up the white marble scale to the hunger after righteousness, whose very longings are bliss. Just longing. It's like there's a psalm that says, I'd rather be a servant in the door of God, of his temple, of God's temple, the I am that I am, than the day in the tents of the wicked. Because those are temporary, Anyway, you'll see. Or not. Behind the counter sat the baker's wife, a stout, fresh-colored woman, looking rather dull, but simple and honest. She was knitting and, if not dreaming, at least dozing over her work, for she never saw the forehead and eyes which, like a young ascending moon, gazed at her over the horizon of the opaque half of her door. There was no greed in those eyes, only much quiet interest. He did not want to get in, had to wait, and while waiting beguiled the time by beholding. He knew that Missy, the baker's daughter, or Maisie, was at school and that she would be home within half an hour. He had seen her with tear-filled eyes as she went and learned from her the cause, and had in consequence unwittingly roused Mrs. Kroll's anger and braved it, when aroused, but though he was waiting for her, such was the absorbing power of the spectacle before him that he never heard her approaching footsteps. "Let me in," said Mysie, with a conscious dignity and a touch of indignation at being impeded on the very threshold of her father's shop. The boy started and turned, but instead of moving out of the way, began searching in some mysterious receptacle hid in the recesses of his rags. A look of anxiety once appeared, but the same moment it vanished, and he held out in his hand the little drop of amethystine splendor. Mysie's face changed, and she clutched it eagerly. "That's real good of ye, Gibbie," she cried. "Where did you get it?" And he pointed to the kennel and drew back from the door. "I thank ye," she said heartily, and pressing down the thumb stall of the latch, went in. "What's that you're collagen with, Mysie?" asked her mother. Collaguin? I don't know how to say it, but whatever. Somewhat severely, but without lifting her eyes from her wires. "You mauna be speaking to loons in the street." She's saying, like, don't speak to loons in the street. "It's only wee Gibbie, mother," answered the girl in a tone of confidence. "Oh, weel," returned the mother. "He's no like the love of loons. Anyway, but what had ye to say to him?" she resumed, as if afraid her leniency might be taken advantage of. "He's no fit company for the likes of you. His father is a smither and a shop. It just says in parentheses shop, and a shop. Ye maun have little to say to see brethren root laddies," whatever that means. "Gibbie has a father, though they say he never had no mother," said the child. "Troth, a fine father," rejoined the mother with a small scornful laugh. "Na, but he's something to make mention of. See, a father, lassie, as it would be telling him, he had none. What said ye till him?" "I bet thinking it him, 'cause I lent my drop as I gave to the shul." Oh, anyway, she's basically saying, "I tent my drop as I on her way to school," it says this morning, I guess, "and her earring fell off," it looks like they're saying, "and was at the shop door waiting to give it back to me. They say he's finding things. He's good at finding things." I might summarize some of this if I can't say it, but I'll just do my best. "He's a good-hearted creature," said the mother, for one that has been so ill brought up, for one that's been so ill brought up. She rose, took from the shelf a large piece of bread, composed of many adhering penny loaves, detached one, and went to the door. "Here, Gibbie," she cried as she opened it. "Here's a fine piece to you." But no Gibbie was there. Up and down the street, not a child was to be seen. A sand boy with a donkey cart was the sole human arrangement in it. The baker's wife drew back, shut the door, and resumed her knitting. Wow. All right. Chapter 2 is called Sir George. Oh, excuse me, I've got to check the time. Okay. Hope you're enjoying this. It's just, oh, I can't say. I mean, our hearts, your heart, your mind, your soul. The word metanoia is the word for repentance in Greek, but it's like metamorphosis of your nous, nous. It's your perception, your understanding, and it's like you have to repent to come into the kingdom of heaven, and it's basically like come to a higher understanding that you're worth more love, that God left heaven to die for you, and all these beautiful things. But it's like reading George MacDonald just does that. It just cleans everything out, and when everything's going wild in this world, and things are going, everyone sometimes is glued to the TV or the quote news or whatever's going on, or whatever problems. Our ego loves to have problems, so it keeps coming up with problems. I just love coming back to George MacDonald and entering in these stories, and they just make everything clear again. you know, it's the reading the scripture does this. If you keep asking God and you have to, what did we read today? Proverbs 2, I think. And it was just like, get wisdom, get understanding, get knowledge, as if you're seeking for hidden treasures. Like you can't just, oh, I read it and that's it. I check the box. Or, I mean, it's good to read anyway, because no word of the scriptures will go void. But anyway, all of this is meant to permeate in us and clean us out. And anyway, I just love that this came to me, that we get this understanding today. We get our fierce dog protecting us. Bye. Anyway, there's a person crossing, so I can flip it, but maybe. Oh, the ocean's so beautiful. I forget to look sometimes. I don't want to just be looking at this book. All right, on my screen, you know? I saw some video that said, your child's brain after screens. And I'm like, oh no, I'll see it at some point, probably. But I didn't have time that day. But I already know. Let's just not get on the screens. All right, I was looking for how to flip it. I forgot where. Excuse me. Oh, shoot. I forgot which one is hers and which one's mine. This is hers. I kind of refill mine before I go back. All right. Chapter 2, we're not talking about wee Sir Gibbie, we're talking about Sir Gibbie, Gibbie's father. What is it? Well, you've got water. I can hold you. Come here. Come sit with me. You want to? Want to? There's water there. All right, or there maybe there's a bird in the bush or something. All right, come on. You definitely don't want to go back yet. No, I'm just fixing your tail, honey. There's just a burr. Okay. All right, let's get back. Thanks for the patience. Okay. Chapter 2, Sir George. The sun was hot for an hour or two in the middle of the day, but even then, in the shadow dwelt a cold breath of the winter, or of death, of something that humanity felt unfriendly. To Gibbie, however, bare-legged, barefooted, almost bare-bodied as he was, sun or shadow made small difference, except as one of the musical intervals of life that make the melody of existence. Excuse me. His excuse me. His bare feet knew the difference on the flags, and his heart recognized unconsciously the secret, as it were, of a meaning and a symbol in the change from one to the other. But he was almost as happy in the dull as in the bright day. Hardy through hardship, he knew nothing better than a constant good-humored sparring with nature and circumstance for the privilege of being, enjoyed what came to him thoroughly, never mourned over what he had not, and, like the animals, was at peace. For the bliss of animals lies in this, that, on their lower level, they shadow the bliss of those, few at any moment on earth, who do not, quote, look before and after, and pine for what is not. I think there's a verse that says something like that. There's a verse that says, in the Psalms, it says, like a child at rest, on his mother's knees, I will still my soul completely. I have stilled my soul completely. John Michael Talbot is a monk type man that sings it, and I sing a cover of it on my channel. I don't set my eyes far beyond me. In the quiet, I have stilled my soul. Anyway, and there's another verse. Well, Jesus says, do not worry about anything, about this day, about the clothes you'll wear, about the food you'll eat. Or what, you can't make yourself taller. God knows you need of all these things. Ask and it shall be given. Stuff like that. Anyway, So who does not look before and after. And Jesus said that, put your hand to the plow and don't look back. And it doesn't mean our past, we can't like work through some of our past or whatever, but don't stay in these past regrets. Ask God for forgiveness. And then he says, and do not worry about tomorrow, for today has enough worries of itself. Sufficient unto the day is today's, the duties of today, basically. But anyway, so who do not quote, look before and after and pine for what is not, but live in holy carelessness of the eternal now. But live in the holy carelessness of the eternal now. Gibbie by no means belonged to the higher order, was as yet indeed not much better than a very blessed little animal. To him the city was all a show. He knew many of the people, some of them who thought no small things of themselves, better than they would have chosen he or anyone should know them. He knew all the peripatetic vendors, most of the bakers, most of the small grocers and tradespeople. Animal as he was laying in a great stock for the time when he would be something more, for the time of reflection, whenever that might come. Chiefly, excuse me, his experience was a wonderful provision for the future perception of character, for now he knew to a nicety how any one of his large acquaintance would behave to him in circumstances within the scope of that experience. If any such little vagabond rises in the scale of creation, he carries with him from the street an amount of material serving to the knowledge of human nature, human need, human aims, human relations in the business of life, such as hardly another can possess. Even the poet, greatly wise in virtue of his sympathy, will scarcely understand a given human condition so well as the man whose vital tentacles have been in contact with it for years. When Gibbie was not looking in at a shop window or turning on one heel to take in all at a sweep, just looking like this, taking it all in a sweep. He was oftenest seen trotting. Seldom he walked. A gentle trot was one of his natural modes of being, and though this day he had been on the trot all the sunshine through, nevertheless, when the sun was going down, there was wee Gibbie upon the trot in the chilling and darkening streets. He had not had much to eat. He had been very near having a penny loaf, half a cookie which a stormy child had thrown away to ease his temper, and done further and perhaps better service in easing Gibbie's hunger. The green grocer woman at the entrance of the court where his father lived, a good way down the same street in which he had found the lost earring, had given him a small yellow turnip, to Gibbie nearly as welcome as an apple. A fishwife from Finstone, with a creel on her back, had given him all his hands could hold of the seaweed called dulce, presumably not from its sweetness, although it was good eating. She had added to the gift a small crab, but that he had carried to the seashore and set free, because it was alive. These, the half cookie, the turnip, and the dulce, with the smell of the baker's bread, was all he had had. It had been rather one of his meager days, but it was wonderful upon how little those rare natures capable of making the most of things will live and thrive. There's a great deal more to be got out of things than is generally got out of them, whether the thing be a chapter of the Bible or a yellow turnip. And the marvel is that those who use the most material should so often be those that show the least results in strength or character. A superstitious priest-ridden Catholic may, in the kingdom of heaven, be high beyond sight of one who counts himself the broadest of English churchmen. Truly, Gibbie got no fat out of his food, but he got what was far better. What he carried, I can hardly say, under or in, but along with those rags of his was all muscle, small but hard and healthy, and knotting up like whipcord. There are all degrees of health in poverty as well as in riches, and Gibbie's health was splendid. His senses also were marvelously acute. I have already hinted at his gift for finding things. His eyes were sharp, quick, and roving. And then they went near the ground. He was such a little fellow. His success, however, was not all these considerations could well account for, and he was regarded as born with a special luck in finding. I doubt if sufficient weight was given to the fact that even when he was not so turning his mind, it strayed in that direction, whence, if any object cast its reflected rays on his retina, those rays never failed to reach his mind also. On one occasion he picked up the pocketbook of a gentleman had just dropped, and in mingled fun and delight was trying to put it in the owner's pocket unseen, when he collared him, and had it not been for the testimony of a young woman who, coming behind, had seen the whole, would have handed him over to the police. After all, he remained in doubt. What is it? What is it, little girl? Want to go back? Want to go back? I know, just a little bit, okay? We got it. We got it. He would have handed him over to the police. After all, he remained in doubt. The thing seemed so incredible. He did give him a penny, however, which Gibbie at once spent upon a loaf. It was not from any notions of honesty. He knew nothing about it. That he always did what he could to restore the things he found. The habit came quite from another cause. When he had no clue to the owner, he carried the thing found to his father, who generally let it lie a while, and at length, if it was of nature convertible, turned it into drink. His father had a problem, you'll see. It's so sad, but I mean, it's part of life for us to address, whatever. While Gibbie thus lived in the streets, like a town sparrow, as like a human bird, without storehouse or barn, as boy could well be, the human father of him would all day be sitting in a certain dark court, as hard at work as an aching head and bloodless system would afford. The said court was off the narrowest part of a long poverty-stricken street, bearing a name of evil omen, for it was called the Witty Hill, the place of the gallows. Wow. My son and I were just watching something like Sherlock Holmes, and there was a place like that. But anyway, I'm not recommending it. I'm sure it's in the books, maybe. That might be cool, but anyway, it was entered by a low archway in the middle of an old house, around which yet clung a musty fame of departed grandeur, an ancient note. In the court, against a wing of the same house, rose an outside stair, leading to the first floor. Under the stair was a rickety wooden shed, and in the shed sat the father of Gibbie, and cobbled boots and shoes as long as, at this time of the year, the light lasted. Upon that stair, and two more inside the house, he went to his lodging, for he slept in the garret. But when or how he got to bed, George Galbraith never knew, for then, invariably, he was drunk. In the morning, however, he always found himself in it, generally with an aching head, and always with a mingled disgust at and desire for drink. Right? He's taken by it. During the day, alas, the disgust departed, while the desire remained and strengthened with the approach of evening. All day he worked with might and main, such might and main as he had, worked as if for his life, and all to procure the means of death, right? Because he's just working. Everybody's working for the weekend. He's just working to get money to drink. It's sad. Anyway, no one ever sought to treat him, and from no one would he accept drink. He was a man of such inborn honesty that the usurping demon of vile thirst had not even yet, at the age of 40, been able to cast it out, of this work ethic still that he had of honesty. So some virtues, there's a verse that says, raise a child up in the way that they ought to go, and they will not depart far from that path. And so anyway, I don't, anyway, we'll see. The last little glory cloud of his origin was trailing behind him, but yet it trailed. Doubtless it needs but time to make of a drunkard a thief, but not yet. Even when longing was at the highest, would he have stolen a forgotten glass of whiskey. And still, often in spite of sickness and aches innumerable, George labored that he might have wherewith to make himself drunk honestly. Wow. Strange honesty. Wee Gibbie was his only child, but about him, or his well-being, he gave himself almost as little trouble as Gibbie caused him. Not that he was hard-hearted. If he had seen the child in want, he would, at the drunkest, have shared his whiskey with him. If he had fancied him cold, he would have put his last garment upon him, but to his whiskey-dimmed eyes, the child scarcely seemed to want anything, and the thought never entered his mind that while Gibbie always looked smiling and contented, his father did so little to make him so. You know, when you're in the drink and you're addicted to something, even if it's our own egotism or our own vanity or our own trying to feel important in other ways, then you don't see the needs of others well. It's just a sad state. Anyway, he had at the same time a very low opinion of himself and his deservings, and justly, for his consciousness had dwindled into little more than a live thirst. He did not do well for himself, neither did men praise him, and he shamefully neglected his child. But in one respect, and that a most important one, he did well by his neighbors. He gave the best of work and made the lowest of charges. In no other way was he for much good. And yet I would rather be that drunken cobbler than many a fair professor, quote, fair professor, as Bunyan calls him, or John Bunyan. You know how in the Pilgrim's Progress he wrote that book, and he you know, these worldly wise people come about him and say, hey, come over here, you need worldly wisdom, and then you'll find, you know, the tree of life. You'll find God and his kingdom. And his name is Christian in the book, John Bunyan's character, and he's a Christian pilgrim, but he's carrying this heavy burden, and all these distractions come to try to get him to go off his true path and lose his true purpose for being here. So I'd rather be a drunken cobbler. I would rather be that drunken cobbler than many a, quote, fair professor, as Bunyan calls him. A grasping merchant ranks infinitely lower than such a drunken cobbler. Wow. You know, someone that's just chasing after money, that has all this clean clothes on and looks good in our world and has no idea of the wretchedness of their soul, of what's going on internally, you know, and this man does some. Okay, so it says, thank God the Son of Man, that's capital S-N-M, so Christ, is the judge, and to him will we plead the cause of such, yea, and of worse than they, for he will do right. It may be well for drunkards that they are social outcasts, but is there no intercession to be made for them, no excuse to be pleaded? Alas, the poor wretches would storm the kingdom of peace by the inspiration of the enemy. Let us try to understand George Galbraith. His very existence, the sense of sunless, dreary, cold-winded desert, he was evermore confronted in all his resolves after betterment by the knowledge that with the first eager mouthful of the strange element, a rosy dawn would begin to flush the sky, a mist of green to cover the arid waste, a wind of song to ripple the air, and at length the misery of the day would vanish utterly, and the night throb with dreams. For George was by nature no common man. At heart he was a poet, weak enough, but capable of endless delight. The time had been when now and then he read a good book and dreamed noble dreams. Even yet the stuff of which such dreams are made fluttered in a party-colored rags about his life. And color is color even on a scarecrow. He had a good mother, and his father was a man of some character, both intellectually and socially. Now and then, it is too true, he had had terrible bouts of drinking, but all the time between, he was perfectly sober. He had given his son more than a fair education, and George, for his part, had trotted through the curriculum of the Elphinstone College, not altogether without distinction, But beyond this, his father had entirely neglected his future, not even revealing to him the fact of which, indeed, he was himself but dimly aware, that from willful oversight on his part and the design on that of others, his property had all but entirely slipped from his possession. All right, let me see the time again. Okay, I gotta go. Let me highlight where we are. Highlight. Okay. All right. I think it's been an hour. We'll see what happens and who Gibbie is, we Sir Gibbie and his father, and why there's a Sir, and what happens with his penchant for drinking too much and what comes of it. And it's none of this is to make any of us feel guilty, but just to see like you just want to let go of anything that's in between you and love, right? I always wear this heart necklace, so I'm like grabbing for it, but I don't when I'm exercising. So anyway, I wish you so much love. I appreciate your presence here. Make sure to like the videos and comment if you will. If you'd like these to go to other people, then it comes back to you all. It does, because I'm just putting them out here as being obedient as I can. And that's one of the ways you guys can all engage, is share and like and comment and all that if you'd like to. Much love.